for him. Arts and diplomacy is an issue. And he's been a basketball player. He's been the national team of Albania, so that explains maybe also his appearance to some extent. He was also mayor of Tirana for 10 years, and now he's been the Prime Minister of Albania very successfully in his third term. And Albania is really doing well, also economically, and we'll ask some questions along those lines. He's, of course, also gone viral, if I may say that, with some recent appearances, which I will not get into. I think the historic appearance in the UN Security Council was one of those issues. There was a joke about Putin also, which the insiders will know. So we're very happy to have the Prime Minister of Albania here this morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
Katharina Reiche is another one of those, we say in German, Grenzgänger. She's been a politician. She was a vice minister, big positions in the parliament, very active, and then moved into industry. She's now the CEO of the largest regional energy and infrastructure provider in Germany, 10,000 employees. Westenergie is the company, and she's also the chairman of the hydrogen board in Germany for a number of years now, which is a big strategy for Germany. So if we have time, we might also get into the hydrogen, and the Prime Minister can respond to that. Welcome, Katharina Reiche.
Thank you.
So that's sort of three questions to the Prime Minister, and then we'll go to Katharina. So first question is, yesterday we had Olaf Scholz here, we had Charles Michel here, a lot of talk about geopolitics and multipolar world, which, as you know, is something which is dear to Chancellor Scholz. He says it's not a question of whether we have a multipolar world rather than a bipolar one, it's how to frame it and how to work with it. Edi Rama, Albania and the whole Balkan region, of course, geopolitically is also very, very important. It's not just economically, it's also geopolitically. And so how do you see that situation from the Balkan or Albanian point of view? What does Albania bring to the table, or the Balkan bring to the table, also with a view towards joining the EU in geopolitical terms?
First of all, thank you very much for this honor. And I also had the opportunity to realize that I'm getting old, because
I think I'm older than you.
Entering this building, I remembered that I was here in a delegation long ago when Chancellor Röller was here, and it was in '99. So. Anyhow,
but you were not Prime Minister.
As far as I'm still here, it's okay. Answering to your question, I must say that after the Russian invasion, even the more skeptical or the more distant from the Western Balkans has realized its geopolitical importance. Western Balkan has a very, very heavy history, but is in the heart of Europe, and there is no feasible solution other than fully getting the Western Balkans inside the European Union. And the complexity of the Western Balkans today is another reason why the process of getting the Western Balkans inside should be accelerated, because we are in the middle of many actors. I'm not talking about Albania, because Albania is very, very clear, also because it had the history that taught us a lot about big players, even when others or didn't really know them, like China, or like Russia, that we get to know in the hardest way, because by being always extremely loyal, we have exaggerated in being loyal to very ruthless dictators like Stalin. So we had Mr. Stalin in our boulevard, even after the Russians themselves got rid of him. So Albania is totally 100% oriented towards the Euro-Atlantic community, but in the other countries we have much more Russian presence, Russian influence, and this has to be fully mitigated by getting the Western Balkans more inside the European Union. And what Albania can bring to the European Union, I think we are too small to make a difference, but we are consistent enough in many ways, and I think will be an added value in terms of peace and security.
So this point about accession, you already alluded to that right now. Jean-Michel made an important speech. We were there.
Charles Michel. You want to make it Jean today?
Jean-Michel. And, you know, there's a discussion about the timing and the framework. And there's also, this is connected actually to this enlargement debate, which you know very well, of course, on the European side, and discussions which are happening with the heads of states on even treaty change and how to think about finances and the governance of the EU. How do you see that? Are you for a specific date, or I don't want to? As
I said, the Russian aggression has opened the eyes to everyone and has made everyone much more aware of the importance of this process and of the Western Balkans for the European Union. But at the same time, the European Union has its own problems that we know very well, the very difficult process of decision-making, the very heavy influence on the member states of their own domestic politics that sometimes defines also the attitude of the Union, because for every step you need consensus. And sometimes, you know, as a friend of mine put it, we feel that by being a patient of traumatic history and by looking at the European Union as our therapist, we realize that the therapist is also traumatized. And this makes it much more difficult, because we find ourselves in certain moments like helping the therapist. So I don't know about dates, about deadlines, because I am not sure that the European Union has the capacity to set a deadline and then to respect it, because they can be all okay when the moment when the deadline is set, but when they have to respect the deadline, someone might not be okay. So the trauma comes back. And we have made very absolute peace with our mind that we have to do our homework, because at the end of the day, I believe the European Union is the most amazing source of know-how in state building. And if there is a difference, fundamental difference between the countries of the Western Balkans that do not have a tradition of states, of functioning states, and let alone of functioning democracies, and other countries alike in different continents, is that we have the bless to have this European Union that is really a stunning source of know-how in that. So to have the possibility to use this know-how and to make the best out of it, to build a functioning democracy and a functioning state, modern state, for our own children is the goal. Then, are we formally now or tomorrow or after tomorrow members or not? This does not depend only from us, so we know it. But I must also confess that I could feel myself being traumatized by the never-ending process of starting the accession talks, because it was really hard to balance your minds in front of this European Union that would say to us, we want you, and then would say, but we are not ready to talk. It's like, yes, we want to marry, but we are not ready to talk. So how you marry if you can't talk? Now we are talking, and this is very important. Will we marry one day? I'm sure. Will we marry tomorrow? I'm not sure. But the important thing is that our love for Europe and for the European Union is unconditioned. So we can have also a kind of couple effect without being married. It's okay.
Very nice. Unconditional love is already a good prerequisite for marriage.
Exactly.
I think so.
Exactly.
I can tell from personal
And imagine how unconditioned is our love when we see that the other side has a conditioned love, but we don't care. So.
And actually, and then we move on to the economy, that actually the conditions the Commission, the EU is imposing on you even before you join the Commission, the EU, as an outsider, not knowing the details are rather tough and sometimes even tougher than they have in their own member states. So they're actually asking quite a lot, I think, in terms of that. But that's just a side remark.
But we must,
but
you are engaging the world starting from this year in this Berlin Forum dialogue, and I assume you want for your guests to be totally open, right? So,
right.
If we are totally open, let's say that, let's say it till the end. Yes, they put a lot of conditions, even before marriage, because they want to be sure that they are marrying someone that is aware that the marriage is tough. So it's okay. We have no problem with that. And we also know that for us is a marriage of love, for EU is a marriage of interest. So it's fine.
That's, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So
I hope it works. Okay, very good.
But history, Albanian history shows that works or doesn't work, will be loyal till the end.
Yeah.
So we were the last to leave the Ottoman Empire, even when after the Ottomans themselves left it, and we were the last to leave the communist empire, even after all the communists left it. So we'll be the last to leave the EU empire, even after Germany would have left it.
Okay.
In case, I hope not.
Very good. Okay. Let me move before I skip the question on the economy and bring in Katharina Reiche. Decarbonization is a big issue for the conference, the transitioning. What are the challenges and the opportunities if you look at Albania in terms of helping in this field towards decarbonization?
Thank you for your question and thank you for inviting me. And it's an honor to discuss with you some topics, Prime Minister. But first of all, I really would like to thank you for your brave and stunning response at Moscow at the UN Security Council meeting last week. Your piercing sense of humor was something Moscow couldn't really handle well. So for me, you have been really the man of the day. But
you know, if you don't have heavy weapons, you should have at least humor, no?
Because, exactly. And that is something the Russians don't have.
Because with no weapons, no humor, you are finished.
Yeah, so Russians seem to lack of humor. So, but to your question, the Western Balkan states made strong commitments when it comes to climate change, to a green transition. You agree to the Paris Agreement. You presented first plans on CO2 emissions for different sectors. The whole region is mainly based on coal, electricity, but the situation in Albania is much different. So 99% of the power generation drives from hydro. which is good for the CO2 balance, which is sometimes difficult if you face heavy droughts. So then you have to import electricity from outside. What I see is that we see first plans and concrete dates for different sectors to decarbonize. We see developments in regulatory, finance and administrative framework. And if it comes to join the EU, I think it should be a task for the EU to think of their own state aid framework. So you asked Prime Minister if there is too much burden, probably. You are very committed to say we take every burden.
We are committed to take every burden.
I know. But for instance, that the EU requires that Albania has to found an own agency to approve right now, even you're not in, if you require and fulfill every state aid regulation of the EU, I think maybe EU could first think of do some reforms in their state aid. What we will need, for instance, would be, like the IRA, an approach on CAPEX and OPEX subsidies. The EU focuses too much on CAPEX, not too much on OPEX. The regulatory framework is really complicated, and the charm of the IRA is that it focuses on ramp up, on scaling industries, and on one goal, and that is the CO2 reduction. So the EU could really take a little bit more of a pragmatic approach, like we see it now in the Balkan countries. A very strength of the region is the interconnected transmission grid. So to develop an integrated energy market could also lower the cost when it comes to transmission. Last comment on this is the potential on renewable energies in the region is really high. So lots of sun, high amount of sunshine hours, potential for wind energy. But also you started to diversify your gas infrastructure. So diversification when it comes to energy supply, I think, is one important step you should focus on, and the EU too.
Yeah, so I think this this energy is a big issue for you. I think you're carbon neutral in electricity because of hydro. It's a big part of your economic package, right? This, I think the state aid point is an important one. That actually, that was the point before you joined the EU, they're already requiring you, if I understood this correctly, to police yourself before you even in. But this is independent. So how do you see this? And is this energy an important part?
Starting from that point, we have seen that not only EU but every international, let's say, organization, when engages with Albania or countries like us that are so eager to get in, they ask from us not just their maximum, but sometimes a maximum that they can't have themselves. It's not directly related to the subject, but it's somehow an example. When we tried to do some regulatory work on the media online, we were inspired by the German model, and we worked on it. And then when we proposed this, we were attacked for a very authoritarian framework. And when I said, but we have taken it from the German model, they said, but the German model is not democratic. So, because to Germany they cannot say anything, to us they can say everything, and it's very clear. So in this, I think, yes, we have always to deal with conditions that sometimes are unfair because we are not members. So we are asked to do what members are asked, and while members have so much support from the EU in terms of finance, we don't. But anyhow, as I said, unconditional love has its pains. And when it comes to the energy sector, yes, we are blessed on one side because we have been a very isolated country, and this was a curse. But what we inherited is practically an environment where we have practically 100% renewable energy. Yes, there is also the curse in it, because when God doesn't cry for some time, then we suffer the lack of the water to produce the energy, and we have to go to the market, and then we are hit by very high prices. That's why we have entered in a very thorough process of diversification. We are building the two biggest photovoltaic parks in the region. We are now entering also in the wind. So, based on our plan, and also, yes, with some LNG and some transformation we are doing in this direction, although Albania has not yet gas as a source of its own economy, because, as I said, we were totally disconnected from the rest. So we were in our own. We plan to be a net exporter of energy within 2030, and so adding to this a potential big discovery, we're waiting now for the last test from Shell. Onshore of a huge resource of oil and gas. This adds to the potential that we might be a country that can be reasonably transformed in a hub of energy in the Western Balkans.
Do you want to say something on the hydrogen part as well? And then I'll ask him about the economy, and if there's time, we'll have one question from the floor or the students. Yes.
So, well, the hydrogen part, I think we see two major strengths of the region, and especially Albania. You mentioned solar and wind potential and your first investments. You have a really capable gas infrastructure, storage, pipeline, terminals. That means these kind of infrastructure could then use in a foreseeable future also for hydrogen production, either blue or green or whatever, because what Europe really needs are large amounts of import. Europe will not cover the future hydrogen demand, which is needed due to heavy industry, hard to abate industries. So we have to diversify potential hydrogen partnerships for the future. And this region could be really a potential partner, because we have existing pipeline. We don't have to think about shipping ammonia or whatever, build new pipelines from Norway to Hamburg. So we have existing infrastructure. And that could be really a case where Europe and the Western Balkan can form a strong alliance. The need in Europe and the demand which can be provided from the Western Balkan states. And I think besides a lot of activities of this government to Australia, Canada and Norway, we should go and look to the Balkans also to form a hydrogen alliance.
Yes, it's part of the strategy. Of course, as you said, is the foreseeable future. It's not something that we can start now, as we started with the other resources. But absolutely, it's part of the foreseeable future, and it's part of our strategy. And again, that's why we always praise our luck let's say, to be in that part of the world because, again, the European Union is instrumental for the know-how and is instrumental for what we can learn from it, being in directly with the Union or bilaterally with countries like Germany or other allies that can provide to us, as they have done all the way, a very important know-how that otherwise we can't invent.
Okay, let me just now, if there's no question from the floor, just basically say, just turn to the economy. I think Prime Minister Rama has done an excellent job. I think Albania is actually doing very well economically, while other parts of Europe aren't, and you're not even in the EU. So I think this is remarkable. You have a lot of investment, you know, in the tourism sector, in the real estate sector. You're investing in that. You have an agro-tourism business, which is booming, let's say. At the same time, you're also doing social policies, if I understand that correctly, you know, given where you are as a person. So I think this economy is really doing well. And you also had one of your ministers here yesterday, Delina. How do you see the prospects for Albania? Are you worried about all that investment coming in? Are you on good track? Because so far you've done a very good job.
Listen, from my experience, I've learned that the economy never does well, can do only better or worse. In the sense that when you say economy is doing well, then people will hate you. So economy is doing better and can do much better, and we'll do everything to do better. But now, what we realize very much, and we see with some satisfaction that is being realized also in the level of the European Union, is that this process of integration, that in terms of formalization of memberships can take all the time needed, with all the traumas in the way, cannot be a process that for the candidate countries is all or nothing. So or you get all when you are a member, or you get nothing until there. So some new spaces should be open for the candidate countries, and we are fighting for that. And now we will host in few weeks the first summit of the Berlin process outside of the European Union in Tirana, and we are very much looking forward to have the announcement of President von der Leyen about a new growth plan for the region of the European Union, which would imply some additional mechanisms, financial and also in terms of more access to a single market and so on, that would help a lot our economies to do better. I think that knowing very well, at least my country, it is what we should do. Economies that do better. Good will never happen, because nobody will accept that the economy is doing good. But better, yes. And in that sense, we are having a very strong bounce on tourism, as you mentioned. We are having all the necessary optimism to expect a very strong bounce also on energy, and for sure then we will do our best to have a very strong bounce on the digital side, because in my view, the new technology is a bless for countries, for developing countries, because it gives you the once in a life opportunity to make jumps that in the linear progress you would never be able to make. So how in the world we could catch up Germany if progress was linear? But with the exponential progress that the new technology allows, then you can see yourself in a better position than Germany when it comes to digital solutions, because having created a perfect state, I would say, or nearly perfect state without the digital, Germany has such a heavy machine to turn in digital, while we or other countries like us did not have this heavy machine. So it's much easier to introduce solutions that are digital solutions, and that's why we are optimistic for the future, and I remain tragically optimistic for the best.
Very nice. I just thought, since we have maybe one more minute, one other maybe more personal question, which you may have been asked before. Your background as an artist, has that helped?
First of all, to set the record straight, you mentioned my background as basketball player. I was basketball player because I was too tall for that Albania.
I see.
And so in that Albania, when they saw two tall guys, they go to basketball. And it was not a democracy that you could say, no, I want to play football. So I played basketball, I would say, I was adding to the centimeters of the team, but not much to the value of the team. I believe. I had the chance that thanks to basketball to get out of the communist Albania, because otherwise you couldn't. You had to be a sportsman playing an international game to get out. Otherwise you couldn't. And so my first visit to Europe before we were free to move was to play here in Germany against your national team, which at that time was not so good as today. So we could stand the punch, although we were beaten. And as artist, yes, I continue. When I entered in this new life of politics, I thought that art was over, but in fact not, because having to participate in the Council of Ministers meeting, I had to keep my sanity, and so while the others were talking big issues, I was drawing, and then the drawings got in their own path, and then became interesting for galleries, and then I discovered that I was drawing all the time in my office. So I do both. I have my people like you in the table. They are talking to me about taxes, about security, about geopolitics, about Germany, and I draw. Mm-hmm. And it's a way to somehow be much more concentrated. I discovered it, and it's also a way to have, to do both. And to finish, once I had a friend of mine coming to see me, and I was drawing. And suddenly he says, Edi, you don't need to have me here if you are not listening to me. But to explain to him that I listen better when I draw was not a good idea. So I said, okay, sorry. And then I was listening to him. And after a while he said to me, are you listening to me? I said, no, let me draw to listen to you. So
we are lucky that you don't draw here.
That's
so
right.
I
just took notes, I didn't draw. So that's,
no, here I...
Okay, we're out of time. Thank you so much, Edi Rama.
Thank you.
And also Katharina Reiche, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great, Edi. Sorry, that's good. You're fine.
session. So we're talking about the global economy in times of fragmentation. Very fitting, because BlackRock just put out a very long and very thorough and wonderful paper about mega trends that we're facing. A lot of it has to do with fragmentation. So who else would we want to speak with about that than the CEO and founder of BlackRock? That's, of course, Larry Fink. Larry, thank you so much for joining.
Well, it's great to be here in Berlin. And Danny, thank you. So I'm seeing many of my friends here, so it's great to be here.
Lots of friends in the crowd, so no pressure, Larry. Look, let's start with the here and now, though. I mean, it's been this time of a reappraisal of risk in these markets, higher for longer. Yields are at cycle highs. Tech stocks are in a correction. Worst month for stocks this year. Have markets adjusted enough? Have they adjusted enough to this new normal we're in?
Well, I don't know what is a new normal. I actually think every day is normal. The markets go up and down. Markets move. Markets respond to political issues, political uncertainties. But I would clearly say we are in a period of time with these mega cycles. We're in a period of time with so many transitions. Whether it's a transition from deflation to inflation, a geopolitical transition, and where does that go? The fragmentation of supply chains is just beginning. We have policies in so many democracies that have moved from policies that I would say were embedded for more deflation, and now the policies are more embedded in inflation.
Well, as we adjust to that, you have Jamie Dimon, for example, saying rates in the U.S. could go to 7%, and we're not ready for it. Is he right?
Look, we all have opinions. I mean, I've been saying for over a year.
I want to know your opinion, Larry.
My opinion is we're going to have 10-year rates at least at 5% or higher because of this embedded inflation. This structural inflation is unlike anything. And I think business leaders and politicians are not providing the foundation to help explain this. We have not seen inflation like this in over 30 years. Actually, I was a young bond trader during the late 70s and where we had hyperinflation. I don't think we're going to have anything close to this inflation of the 70s, but we have so much deeper structural inflation, and we are underestimating the change in geopolitics. Is so structurally inflationary. When I was in Davos earlier this year, I heard the phrase national security uttered everywhere. And quite frankly, I never heard those phrases uttered that often before that in all my years. So national security for chips or food or energy, obviously energy, and all these issues. And the question is at what cost? And nobody answers that question, at what cost?
Well, you said politicians, governments, they need to do a better job of explaining this, of talking. What would that actually look like?
Well, I mean, they have to recognize if we are going to focus on the whole idea about restricting immigration. Big topic here in Germany. Big topic in the United States. We are down in the United States close to 3 million legal immigrants. We've changed the immigration policy. At the same time, there's so many job needs. And in the United States, we've had close to $1 trillion of fiscal stimulus just beginning its J-curve. And these are huge job creators. And at the same time, we have restricted immigration. And as a result of it, we see more wage pressure. So at what cost? We have, in the United States, a very protracted strike between the auto workers and the auto companies. It has been reported that the union is asking for a 40% increase. So at what cost? In the long run, what does that mean for jobs? Do more jobs move? This is the conversation we're having now. We are, because of the invasion of Ukraine and the realization in Europe, especially here in Germany, of the dependency in Russian gas, every boardroom is asking themselves, where are our other dependencies?
Yes, but...
And the dependency in China in terms of manufacturing assembly is something that many companies have said we cannot.
Does there need to be leadership, though, to reinvigorate multilateralism? Or is that concept, because in this era of friendshoring, reshoring, is that over? Do we need to rethink that?
Well, globalization is still intact. It's just being reimagined. So whether we have our supply chains out of China, now we're moving them to Vietnam, Philippines, Eastern Europe, Turkey, India. Mexico is one of the real destinations for North American demand. And so this is not global. By no means globalization is over. But as we reimagine these supply chains, there's a reason why so many supply chains were so embedded in China, because that for years and years and years was the cheapest, easiest place to do it. And so in many cases, we're moving supply chains at higher costs.
Yes, especially if you're onshoring to either Europe or the US, where you're having these labor conversations.
But you may have, all of this means is we're going to be more aggressively moving towards technology to add more productivity, whether it is using more robotics, AI. All of this is going to, in the long run, that's what I'm saying, markets go up and down. We have big changes. We have big changes in labor. We have higher wages. In the long run, companies adapt, businesses adapt.
Right.
But the biggest issue for me, and I say this to every governmental leader I see worldwide, what the world is missing today is hope. I see more fear than any time in my business career.
What are you hopeful about, Larry? What is that hope?
Look, I'm a long-term optimist, and we build BlackRock on optimism. We are the largest retirement manager in the world. Okay, why on earth anybody would ever put their savings into something that may have a 30-year outcome? My gosh, that is optimism. Okay, if you're not optimistic that 30 years hence is a better outcome, you're going to keep all your money in a bank. Right. But Danny, what's going on in China is a great example of fear. Before COVID, the Chinese, who are unbelievable savers, they saved 35% of disposable income. 35%. Think about that. Now, they did it because there's no safety nets of healthcare like we have here in Germany, no safety nets of retirement, one-child family, all these, dynamic issues. During COVID and the fear and the lockdowns and the changes of policies, savings rates in China right now are 50%. And that's fear.
And they're struggling to reinvigorate the economy at this point.
Because they're frightened.
But what does that look like on the ground for the investors in the crown? You at BlackRock, how do you look at this? Is there a way to capitalize on it? Do you pull back? What do you do with a problem like this?
Right now, I think in our mega trends, right now we are underinvested in China. We believe structurally until we see savings rates, which is in my mind, when we see savings rates decline and they're consuming more, that's an indication of more hope, that they don't need to save as much, that they can consume, they can do other things. To me, these are very big macro trends. But I just want to say the biggest issue is we as business leaders, we as political leaders, if we don't provide more certainty and more hope, this is what causes recessions. This is what causes pullbacks.
So to be clear, because there are a lot of calls of a recession, hard landing, soft landing, no landing. They've all lost their meaning at this point. Let's be honest. So in this era of fear, of no hope, are we headed for recession right now?
Well, there's not no hope. It's all, I'm hopeful.
Let's hope. Larry's hopeful. We're happy about that. But does that mean we are headed for a recession right now?
So I think we have to analyze that by each region, because the United States, our home mortgage market is based on a 30-year mortgage. So anybody who has a home mortgage, higher interest rates does not impact them. And so the transmission of high elevated interest rates in the U.S. takes much longer to impact the economy. Whereas in other places where you have more floating rate, or like in the United Kingdom where you have generally a 5-year fixed and then it resets. And so let's assume 20% of the mortgages have to be, reevaluated at a higher level. That creates more immediacy at higher rates. So I think we're going to see some economies enter recessions early.
Which ones would that be?
Well, I think Europe.
Just anyone's more sensitive to
the ones that are more sensitive to this elevated interest rates, and you're starting to see a real decline in GDP and other. They're basically flat now, but can they go into a more protracted recession? Whatever the recessions we're going to have, they're going to be quite modest. So I'm not even that fearful. But the other issue.
I have a stat for
let
fear
me just say one thing,
yes,
Danny.
Yes, then I'll inject the fear.
But I believe if we have labor shortages, if getting back to this whole social issue of how are we going to be doing this, in many areas you may need a recession to bring down labor demand. And I think this is one of the things that's going to impact in the United States. You still have a very vibrant economy. The United States, and as I said, the J curve of the Infrastructure Act, the CHIPS Act, the IRA, which has huge implications, that's going to be creating jobs. And so it may require a more protracted Federal Reserve, and it may mean by 2025 the United States economy may be entering a recession, but I don't see it any time in the near term.
So throughout history of U.S. growth slowdowns, we have underestimated every single one of them. Are you confident we're not making that same mistake again?
Look, if central banks can overshoot. If fear becomes worse, then consumers pull back and the recessions are going to become more protracted. We have elections in so many places of the world. We have an election in the United States. We have all that stuff. We are going to have many political candidates who are going to provide a lot of fear,
yes,
unfortunately. And I think the political winner is the one who provides the most hope for the future, or what people believe the hope in the future.
Do you see that, though? Do you see anyone projecting hope?
I dearly hope so. I'm projecting hope.
Larry for president? I don't know.
No, I'm too young.
That is that is very true. Look, you make an excellent point. I think half of the population is going to be in an election next year.
Yeah.
Could we then have a recession based on what you're saying, not by a monetary accident, but by a fiscal accident?
So in my travels seeing governmental leaders, I talk about the need for more public-private investing, whether it is in infrastructure, sustainability, whatever you want to say, power grids. What I see is most democracies are having elevated fiscal deficits. I worry about it. I think it's going to be a crisis in the future. I believe we are hitting thresholds of just too much debt. The only solution we have now is reorienting, reimagining how we finance growth. And I think the way we're going to be able to finance growth is public-private. There's so much private money that is looking for great long-term investments to work, whether that is in power grids or infrastructure, in sustainability, charging stations, you name it. And so in all our conversations is how can we reimagine finance? How can we find a better structure? And how can we then leverage public finance with private capital to augment growth?
Right.
And this is going to be the big key for the next 10 years.
Can I ask about how you're thinking about that at BlackRock? Because you're already the world's largest asset manager. So what is your goal now?
Look, our goal is to provide a better financial future for more human beings. All our money is not a single euro dollar is our money. 100% of our money is our clients' money. We have to do what our clients are looking to do. And I think we are a really good fiduciary, that we work really well with our clients. We give them long-term views. When they ask me what's going on in the market, I really don't have a good answer because I don't really care about the day-to-day. Your business, you care about the day-to-day business. I mean, our job is to give opportunities for long-term investors that they can earn a return and that they can have a healthy life in the future with dignity.
Right.
And that's our job. And so if we can provide that advice to give more people hope with dignity in retirement, then I think we're going to earn more share of wallet.
I do care about the day-to-day, Larry, but I also I know the history, and one that stands out is 2009. You buy BGI, you buy iShares, $6.6 billion. It was the Louisiana Purchase of asset management, and apologies for all the non-Frenchies and Americans in the audience. You might have to explain to them what the Louisiana Purchase is. But in other words, it was big, it was transformative. Will you ever do a deal like that again? You think something so transformative for BlackRock?
Well, I mean, when we did that deal, many reporters in the commentary said we're already too big, and we were 2.9 trillion then, and now we're 9.5 trillion. And so the answer is yes, we believe we have great opportunities to transform our company again. I am very excited about change. Let me be clear, we are as neurotic today as we were when we started the company 35 years ago. We're having a great time working with our clients, and I do see some very large opportunities for inorganic growth.
Yeah, because what would be today's equivalent of ETFs in 2009 that are on the verge of this explosive growth?
Oh my gosh, I mean, getting back to this whole idea of working with governments, public-private, it may not have that type of $1 trillion of explosive growth, but I do believe we can help make a difference in building better societies. We can prepare societies better, working with governments in terms of preparedness for elevated temperatures in the world. We believe we are going to have to move more rapidly towards decarbonization. We believe that hydrocarbons, by the way, are going to be with us for a long, long time. And that's why we're working with energy companies, not against energy companies. That is why we said do not ever divest of hydrocarbons, which the far left doesn't agree with me. But in many cases, the far right disagrees with me. And so I guess we're doing something right when I'm getting attacked from both sides. But
yes, that is the measure, I think. Attacks everywhere. Well, look, I mean, these are massive global threats, right? And they do require a level of trust. So how do you gain trust from the skeptics, especially with some of the political dialogue happening in America?
By doing the right thing every day, by making sure that the skeptics truly understand what we're doing. In many cases, many people don't care what we're doing. They just are using us as a vehicle. But the most important thing, we provide choice for every client. We work with every client. It is not our money. And we work with them to try to have each and every client have options and choice. And it is their money, and they have to direct the money how it goes. But we just did a survey that was part of that article that 57% of our global investors are going to put more money into decarbonization technology. And let's be clear, we are not going to have a transition unless we can find technologies to bring down the competitive cost of renewables. We cannot do that. We saw what happens with elevated energy prices just 2 years in Germany and in Europe. You can't have a transition. And more importantly, if we don't reorient and reimagine finance, we will never decarbonize the emerging world. We see when energy prices go up, the emerging world uses more coal because livelihood and life is more important than the future. And so we need to reimagine finance. And finance is going to have to find ways of bringing billions and billions and trillions to help them decarbonize.
Right.
We don't have the structure in the world today. We have a World Bank and IMF that was created after post-World War II. They're organized that when banking was a prominent lender, and they can't, because of the Basel capital standards, because of Dodd-Frank in the United States, banks can't lend.
And more of that, the world is awash in debt.
To developing countries. Sure. They lend well, but
the world's debt is moving more into private hands, $300 trillion worth of debt. But when it moves into private capital, into an asset management, are there risks in that?
Well, my gosh. I mean, when I'm asked that question by many central bankers, and when you raise capital standards for the banking system. And the banking system is very important because they're the only organizations that can provide leveraged capital. But because of leveraged capital, there are risks. When an asset manager provides a loan, we have one liability. We don't leverage. And so the transmission is far safer. But could there be risk? I'm not trying to suggest there not risk. One of the foundations of BlackRock, when we began the organization, we had a strong belief that the capital markets were going to become the engine to finance the world. And if you look at the charts, the role of banking balance sheets, which is what society wanted, has been reduced, and the role of the capital markets have grown. That's a good outcome because as society wanted to reduce societal's risk in a banking system, we needed another source of raising capital.
Right.
And this is a blessing. Now, is there new risks when you have these big pools of money in capital markets? Unquestionably. Should there be
what are they, though? What are the risks?
But, I mean, right now, in the world, we're moving more and more private credit from the banking system to the capital markets. The one beauty of banking, when they provided a loan to a medium and small business, they generally have a banking relationship. They generally have deposits. They're generally more patient. The question will be when you're in an investment firm, are you going to provide that patience to that small and medium company that may be struggling? And there lies the tension. They're not going to be as patient. And that could create a real structural issue. And if there was a deep recession where many small and medium businesses are being threatened, we are going to see then a more immediate reaction. The transmission is going to be very quick, quicker than the banking system, because the banks have other businesses, and if somebody in the private market is just providing a loan and there's no other interconnection, then they're going to have to do the right thing on behalf of their owners of capital as a fiduciary. They're going to have to call a loan, they're going to have to repossess property or whatever that may be. And so I'm not saying that's a risk at all. What I'm trying to say, we need to talk about what are the dynamics, what are the changes are when there is a real ecosystem change. And so right now I don't see any risk. In fact, I think the Federal Reserve came out with a position paper saying there's actually less risk because there's less leverage in the system by doing that. But let's be clear, when we're in a recession, we need more leveraged capital from the banking system. And so what society needs is a very strong banking system alongside a very strong capital market.
Right. I mean, a lot of these things are new, but I think we can also learn a lot from the past. I mean, we're an audience with a lot of young business school students and a lot of young investors who haven't seen 5.5% rates before. You've seen it, you've lived through it, you've traded through higher. 1986, a quite infamous story of yours of making a wrong way bet on interest rates that lost First Boston $100 million. With that experience in hand, what is your advice to someone managing risk right now to avoid the mistakes of the past?
Well, that was probably my biggest learning experience of my life. So let's start there. And I promised myself when we lost money and we did not understand the risks we were taking, and that was the foundation of Aladdin, which is the largest risk system in the world. And so you can't avoid risk. In fact, those who avoid risk make no returns. Okay, but you have to be aware of the risk. You have to study risk. You have to be self-aware of the risk you're taking. So I would just say it's just as bad. And actually, in the year before we lost that money, we were the #1 profit center for a couple of years before. We might have been foolish, but everybody loved it when you made a lot of money because we did not understand why we were making so much money. Okay, everybody understand when you lost money.
Right.
So the biggest lesson I ever had in my life was I want to know every moment, every day, as much as possible, the intended risks we're taking. And so the foundation, when we started BlackRock 35 years, and 25% of our people were technology people, which was kind of unheard of in the financial services area. And now we have built the largest, most comprehensive risk system that is utilized by governments, by central banks, by insurance companies, by wealth managers, and by pension funds around the world.
When you look at the landscape now of global Wall Street, and I know you have an excellent view of that, do you see people taking undue risk, not applying that lens that you're talking about that concerns you?
Every moment there's some people taking undue risks. Some of them are wildly successful. Okay, you know, there's asymmetric risk everywhere. And the people who are wildly successful, let's be clear, it was probably an asymmetric bet, and they won. The problem is, when you take an asymmetric bet, a lot of people are going to lose. And so let's be clear. The beauty of markets, there are going to be winners and losers. Unless you're in index funds and you're doing a long thing and you're keeping it for the long term, that is not a bad thing. The question is a risk that is occurring within markets, within any individual, does that create a systemic risk? It's not about risk. It's about, does it impinge on the economy? Does it impinge on society? But we should not be running away from risk. If we ran away from risk, you know, when I'm here in Berlin, I see cranes. Okay, that developer's making a, you know, whatever, it's a 5-year risk of planning. Maybe it's a 7-year risk of planning, building. Is there going to be tenants in that building? That's a risk.
Yeah.
Today, unfortunately, because permitting, I mean, when you want to build a power grid, when you want to build a pipeline, as you prepare for hydrogen or whatever the use may be in a pipeline. What is that, a 15-year plan because of permitting and getting this done? I mean, that's the problem, why we're not moving fast enough. If we could shorten...
Is that just a regulation issue? There's too much regulation in general? Is that what you're saying?
Regulation is fine if can it be more immediate? No one is questioning the review process, but why can't we, with new technology, with AI, why can't we get the review process in weeks instead of 7 years? Why can't we move the, society forward? Okay, that's what we need. And by the way, if we can move the review process down from years to weeks, I promise you, hope will be flourishing because we're going to be able to do things faster to move society forward.
That sounds great, but we're 44 hours away right now from a U.S. government shutdown. They've been unable to come together on that. I mean, they're...
Yes. What do you want me to say?
I just don't know how you...
I'm not in favor of a shutdown. Okay, they're not listening to me. But no, I think that is... I think a shutdown for a country that has $33 trillion of debt, that is not a good outcome. When you have that type of debt, what are we telling the lenders? 40% of the U.S. Treasury market are owned by non-U.S. entities, whether it's individuals in a bond fund, corporations, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, central banks. That is not, can you imagine you go to your bank and say, I'm not paying my mortgage? That's what we're doing. And it's not about it's not about the new debt. It's about what Congress has already approved. It's irrational from my vantage point. It's wrong from my vantage point. At the same time, it's political. And as we know, in politics today, that creates the fear and it's scary.
And we've seen rating agencies react. Moody's put out a note basically saying a U.S. government shutdown would be bad for American credit. Are we still in a place where a default is likely? I know the shutdown is separate from that, but if that's the track we're headed on, is a default still possible for the American economy?
Well, let's hope not.
That is an excellent answer.
Okay.
That's an excellent answer. At the same time, going back to this idea of decarbonization in the world, we have had many funds have to pull back from ESG funds. I know you felt under pressure as well, and we talked about this. But in an election cycle, do you fear those attacks, those very specific attacks, get worse?
As I said, we're hearing from more investors that are looking to put more money in decarbonization. we believe that we as a world have to rapidly find the new technologies to bring down the competitive premium. So, yes, we are going to, and I said I'm not using the term ESG anymore. And the main reason why you may have a different opinion what ESG does, everybody has a different opinion. But if we want to talk about, sustainability and decarbonization, I don't believe.
Okay.
And here's an amazing thing already. And so much of the attack on sustainability and decarbonization comes from what we call our red states. If you look at the most recent data where all the IRA money is going, I think it's like 60% of the money are going to the red states. And so if you think about Texas right now, and Texas is an amazing state. It is the #1 state in hydrocarbons, everybody knows that. But it is the #1 state in America for wind and solar.
Right. Well,
it had 50 days of temperature around 40 degrees in a row this summer.
Yeah.
50 straight days in Austin, Texas. And for the first time, they had no blackouts because of wind and solar this year.
So the other angle to this, also in the middle of an election year, is this is kind of the first AI election when we have mass use of artificial intelligence, the potential for misinformation to increase.
Yes.
Does that concern you?
I think AI has tremendous potential. It's going to change how we work, how we live. It also has a potential of creating real fears and problems. And so, as we have heard from the men and women who are deeply involved in it, there needs to be structure. Governments worldwide need to get in front of this. This is moving so rapidly. But let's be clear, every company, every board we talk to is aggressively focusing on how can we navigate. If you overlay AI and robotics, this is what is going to transform societies very rapidly. And I think Europe, because of the demographics of Europe, we could use AI and robotics as a means to create much more productivity. I'm worried about, let me just say one thing I'm really worried about AI and robotics. Historically, over the last 30, 40 years, the countries that had great masses of people that were educated, that were aggressive, who were willing to work hard, the Chinese is a great example, they were able to build their economy. If AI and robotics changes how we work and how we build, the countries that have huge populations, growing populations, could be the most suffering nations because we are not going to have to build so many things offshore.
Interesting.
And the countries actually that have declining demographics and are worried about it, and the narrative, what does that mean for growth? It actually might be the true blessing. It may be those countries that will have less social pressure. And the great thing that I wanted to say, and the best test tube, and it'll be very clear for here in Europe. In the world, each year, there's 1.2 million human beings die from automobiles. And every one of us, we're pretty immune to it, unless we have somebody we know or a family member we know who have been harmed or died from an automobile accident. We're just around the corner to have driverless cars.
Yeah, we're close. But I do want to know, Larry,
driverless cars will have less than 5,000 deaths a year.
Yeah.
And it's going to save so much fuel. People will be using this. So on sustainability issues, but we have millions of jobs that will be lost.
Yeah.
And how do we navigate that?
Yes. Okay. That's exactly where I wanted to go. Okay. I'm glad you went there. I think we're running up against a little bit of time, so we have to be quick here. I've already accepted my jobs going to the AI overlords layer. I don't think we're there.
I don't even think there's going to be a need for CEOs anymore.
Good. Maybe that means we can all be on a beach somewhere. Right. But how do you think about that at BlackRock? You obviously have a robust AI research department too.
Yeah.
Do you foresee a lot of BlackRock jobs going the way of AI?
I think we have jobs that are going to be evolving and changing, and we're going to have even more dynamic jobs from that. I mean, every time you see, the naysayers about technology, job loss, we have not seen that. We've seen actually job creation, but there's a transition from the time when there may be immediate job loss to a transition to a different type of job. All I can say is, this past year we added over 1,000 employees on a base of 20,000. We see more opportunity. We're aggressively using AI. We have our AI labs with different universities. We're deploying big data to get better insights in how we invest and how we think. We're studying more and more things. We're using AI to understand physical climate risk. We have really advanced what we believe is models that show where physical climate risk can have a real impact, and how should we invest in that? How do we think about that? So we are spending most of our time focusing on how we can use this to improve society, how we can improve BlackRock, and how can we improve our relationships with our clients and in all the societies we work.
Well, we have to leave it there because it's a message of hope.
Hope.
Larry,
thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.